This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Yes.
And that's by design, eh? Good. It's nice to have. Thank you for having me this morning.
Well, thank you for coming this morning.
Good morning.
And even as we get into it, Dennis is going to welcome you to the show with today's proverb. He'll tell you where it's from, and
Yes.
we'd love to get your interpretation of
Thank
this
you.
one.
Thank you.
Yeah, so today we are in Zambia, a country in the southern part of the continent. And it's a landlocked country and bordered by 8 countries. Which countries we're talking about? Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. When we talk about the population, we're talking about 20 million people. And when we talk about politics, the current system is multi-party democracy. We asked Okari whether he was there during the multi-party struggle in the country. Says he was there in Dandora at 3 years old and he saw everything.
Oh, that was during the coup.
During
That was the coup.
Oh, the coup.
82.
Yes, 82. Yeah, so
That's
it
terrible.
He was 3 years old. Eh? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell him where I was, but not now.
All right, so let's go to the proverb. What you wear is known by the arm. What you wear is known by the arm. How would you interpret that?
The arm meaning the.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What you wear is determined.
Is known by
Is
the
known
arm.
by the arm. Basically, this is what you'd say, an image of what a person is. So, depending on your approach to life or attitude to life, you will either put on a good band, a good bangle, or a very expensive watch. So that will tell us what you think you are, what
You
your
are.
value is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Struggle with that one. So it's good to have an analyst coming to the room. It's necessary to do. Well, thank you so much for that. We're going to take a look into the nation, take a magnifying glass to what's going on and what's happening at the moment, and then what it could be interpreted to be, and how then this poses for the country. So last week, in a way that hasn't been done for a while from the president, he was very clear about his position when it came to how members of parliament and parliament as a whole, both houses, conduct themselves. And we heard from him for the first time in many months that, you know what, I've heard that committees of parliament are taking bribes for decisions to go in certain ways. And this cannot be the case, that you're supposed to be the house that upholds representation, upholds legislation, and upholds oversight. You cannot be the one then who has your hands in the cookie jar. So after DevCon, we then came to this week, yesterday more specifically, where there was a UDA and ODM parliamentary group meeting, where again, given an opportunity, he was a little bit more deliberate in his caution, and he said, this has to stop. You cannot be the one making the law and breaking the law at the same time. You cannot be the one to be seen to be complicit in this kind of behavior. He then went on to say there will be consequences for what you do. And he basically said to the speakers, your houses are a mess. Clean it up. And then your members, if they're taking, he now mentioned amounts. 10 million was the amount that he mentioned, and said, look, they cannot continue like this. Was it necessary, or was it time that the president spoke in this manner?
Well, I think that, and I think we've said it on this show, that this presidency is fairly interesting in the sense that it will actually take us to a new consciousness. I've said it that it exerts pain, and this presidency also brings reality to bear. Now, we are talking about corruption, and who better to speak about this than the president himself? You've heard that for the impeachment to go through, MPs took bribes. Where did they take the bribes from? So it is on record that MPs are taking bribes, and it's on record that it takes two to tango. Sometimes it's the executive that is encouraging MPs to take bribes. and sometimes it's the legislature itself, dangling the bribery card. So, having said that, I think what is critical for us to accept is that we are a country in which corruption is rife. That has come on admission of not just the president himself, but even I don't know if it's the head of opposition or the head of or the other side of government, Raila Odinga, So both of them are saying that there is a problem. We are also being told, and I think this is an argument that the former prime minister has been pushing, that the CDF kitty, it's itself a symptom of corruption. Of course, you've seen the Auditor General's report saying that 4.1 billion cannot be accounted for. So essentially, you are having people who are supposed to be giving oversight to the executive, also meddling down on issues of implementation and in a manner that does not promote accountability. So it's true, corruption is a problem in the country. It is a problem in the legislature. It is a problem in the judiciary. It is a problem in the executive. So the government has to face its a problem that. And government has both three arms, because when you are fighting with the legislature, your executive, they can even impeach you if you push them too hard. When you are fighting with the judiciary, it can even, sanction you if you're pushing too hard. So what we are dealing with here is that the three arms of government are all coming sharply into question, sharply into the public eye, and being challenged to prove that they might be, I'm just saying they might be beyond reproach as Caesar's wife, which in this case, they are not. And they come a crop on it. So it's a case of a pot calling the kettle black.
You're saying the president is calling out members of parliament where he could be in the same pot as well?
Because the circumstances around which MPs are taking bribes have also been associated with impeachment process, which was driven by the executive. So here we are saying they are taking bribes to oversight, but there are also claims that they took bribes to impeach. Yeah.
And the move of that motion is in that committee that was actually been pointing for this, for passing of this bill.
Absolutely. So that it is not strange for anybody to either use their money to defeat a law that could be coming against them, or to use their money to introduce that which they want. So when you want to have a law that's favorable to you, you're a business, you're maybe a company that's selling, I don't want to say a product, but maybe a product that you would think that without that kind of law, you would be out of business. You will use your power, and that has happened, whether you're talking about tobacco, whether you're talking about alcohol, whatever it is. That has happened in the past. So we are being told what we know is happening. But the beauty is that we are being told from the top, from the State House itself, that actually people are eating. Waswahili wanasema pwaguzi nakutana na pwagu nakutana na pwaguzi. Yeah. So this is a game of people who know and people who are very familiar with it. Remember, the president himself has said he was in parliament for 15 years. Yeah. So he knows. Yeah. So and he has been the deputy president for 10 years. So he knows.
So why say it out in public in this manner? 2 weeks running. He had an opportunity at DevCon last week. He said it. He's come out and said it at the PG yesterday. Why? If this is it's the thing that everybody knows that happens and that has never really gotten a punch in terms of trying to get rid of it. But why say it now?
This is what I was saying when we started, and I was saying that where are things? And I was saying things are falling in place. They are not falling apart, they're falling in place. When the executive begins to take on the legislature, they have taken on the senators for unnecessarily harassing governors. They are taking on the National Assembly for taking bribes. Here, things are falling in place. Politics is falling in place, and we want to begin to see what 2027 will look like. Just because, one, you want to make sure that you don't carry liabilities with you. So if an MP is a liability, dump them and make sure that you put on a machine that will kick them out of the assembly. If a senator is a problem, dump them, deal with them. So this is politics at its best. Preparing for the groundwork in 2027.
So I'm hearing you, Dr. say that as much as there is all this talk about fighting corruption, because it's not the first time we're hearing the president talk about corruption. He's mentioned it before, and even if you listen to his earlier statement when it was during Harambe to Taacha Mambo ya Harambe, he went back to it. When you talk about even the conflict of interest bill that was signed, the members of parliament taking that. But let's go back to the Finance Bill 2024. For that bill to pass, we are being told that members of parliament were given money for that bill to pass. And reports get to us that they came from the house on the hill. So here now, when you talk about now fighting corruption, it is not because there is any intention to fight corruption, but because it is a political chess being played in readiness for 2027?
Absolutely. And this is why I was saying that this government never campaigned on the promise of zero tolerance to corruption. You remember? Never, that was not an issue. Do they want to make it an issue for 2027? Absolutely, yes. Why? Because this is one thing that has marred their image. So how do you do it? You start by fighting. Who do you fight? Fight both the people you know and imaginary people, so that you are seen as a champion of corruption. Remember, even for Raila, he's been touted as a champion of anti-corruption, but his dalliance with the UDA seems to suggest that he doesn't care about corruption. So what do? Reinvent yourself. Make corruption an issue. Make it an agenda. Find a target. Hit it hard. Yesterday's meeting ended prematurely, and that is a good thing, because then you now begin to have divide and then rule. Yeah.
This is interesting because also during this parliamentary group meeting, like you said, opposition government leader Raila Odinga now insisted that legislators, members of parliament, should not run the CDF kitty. Of course, we know that this has been a bone of contention for the longest time, with the courts ruling NGCDF unconstitutional, should not be run by members of parliament. And then he did weigh in at that time, say that, this should actually go to the counties. He mentioned something to that effect during, the Devolution conference last week. But then yesterday he was very clear, where he had to speak over the crowd and say, listen to what I am saying. Legislators should not run the CDF kitty. And they were up in arms and they said, essentially, what are you talking about? And he had to ask twice, listen to what I am saying. But there was no listening that was being done at that point, because they felt, this is what we're hearing now. We were supposed to be a unified force at some point, but now we have somebody who's telling us that the thing essentially that has given us expediency and ensures our expediency might be taken away because now you are doing this brotherly dalliance with the president?
And this is the invitation that first, for Honorable Raila, he's doing one thing. He's championing devolution by hitting at the National Assembly and hitting at funds that seem to be taking away resources from devolution. So he's presenting himself as a champion of devolution to that extent. The president on the other side is saying that he is presenting himself as the champion against corruption. That is another side. Remember, both of them have said that when you combine the two of them, they are going to give Wamunyoros a hard time. So they are developing an agenda here that is likely to gain traction on account of how they prosecute it. Now, that said, what we want to, from where I'm sitting, for sure, we shouldn't be having the National Assembly run a kitty that seems to be suggesting that it's a national government kitty, when some of the some of the issues or some of the activities they're spending on could easily be housed within the counties. Granted that if this money was to go to the counties, you need to ring fence it for each constituency so that each constituency can then achieve a certain level of development. I want to suggest that there was a need for this constitution of Kenya to put in a few commitments, what you call in constitutional law, pre-commitment strategies so commit some resources to counties, 15%. That is a given. It means that everybody can start on some footing, can be included. That is an assurance that a region at least will get that. that is on top of any other resources that the national government can bring. You can even bring the national CDF or any other thing, but that is an assurance that this can be ring-fenced, even if it is managed from a county level, and that is a good thing. So those commitments need to be done, but they should be done within the spirit of the Constitution, which is make sure that that kind of development is being done at the lowest level by the kind of entity or kind of government that is being designed down there. And that makes a case for county governments. I would argue the same thing, that remove MPs from trying to do development work. Let MPs stick to oversight so that they can oversight the counties, oversight the national government to make sure that something is happening accountably, accountability is high and so on. So a good argument, but you do not shout, or rather you do not expect people who have a feast you can't tell them not to eat. They've been invited to a feast of CDF and you're telling them that this feast must be is stopped. They will not agree with you. They are ready for the party. They are ready for the feasting. They will not agree. So is the president and Raila Odinga going to increasingly find hostility among the members of Parliament? And when I say members of Parliament, I mean both senators and the National Assembly.
Absolutely.
And the answer is yes.
He did
Why?
say that senators also should really essentially have no business oversighting the county governments.
Yes.
He did say this as well. So is it possible to see that here with members of Parliament, NGCDF on this side, the Senate with now the suggestion that the oversight role essentially should be removed from the counties? That's likely to bring about some kind of friction, is there not?
Absolutely. And this is, for me, a good thing. You know, in politics, when people are agreeing, know that you, the citizen, you are in trouble. When they are disagreeing, you get to know what is happening. Right now, we know there's eating happening. We know money is passing. So when they are disagreeing, most likely the noise will reduce the eating and scuttle some of the schemes that are being made. So it's a good thing. These noises are good things. These revelations are good things. We will at least have something to talk about and something to fight about. So I don't want to see it as a negative thing. I want to agree that they must continue to disagree about these issues so that we get to the bottom of it. Who knows? We might just get a solution out of the conflict and out of the noise.
Now, let's assume we don't get a solution.
Yes.
This is all politics. The two gentlemen, obviously, before making an address to this gathering, will obviously know and exchange notes. And sometimes, having been in these places, and I'm sure you have, you'll always find these conversations, unaona vile tuliwaambia, unaona kama walisikia. You know, it's also a show of force in a way. So the president and also Raila Odinga are reading from different scripts, but this is very well coordinated. My question is, because it ended prematurely, and there might be victims because the president said he's actually pushing for arrests. You look at the composition of the people in that committee, and he never mentioned names. You have 3 ODM members in that committee. You've got 6 UDM members. Then you've got 2 Jubilee, 1 Ford Kenya, and I think you've got 1 MCCP party. Now, if this is pushed, and as we know politics, there will always be sacrificial lambs at some point. If these persist and this push by Raila Odinga continues, and what the president, because the statements that he's made about corruption in Parliament and people receiving money on behalf of Parliament and asking MPs, did you receive? Because this committee asked for 10 million, for example. What does this fallout look like if you're to pan out? Because we've had a history of these kind of situations right before an election. What do you see happening ahead of the elections?
The same thing. We will all agree that the level of attrition of members of Parliament is about 75% every election time. So granted, these guys are a liability. You can't go to elections with them united. And the president knows that, and Raila knows that. And they know who will go as a result of that. And they want to push so that if you don't like what they're doing, they'll plant their candidate on you. And you'll have a run for your money, because then they'll also fund that candidate. And things will be so hot for you. So granted, this is a scheme. They know very well that they can't go with this baggage to the elections. They must offload some of them, and that fight is real. Sacrifices are part of this game. Your ODM MP, yes, I'm your ODM leader, but on this one, on your own. That will not happen. You're UDA and I'm your leader. Sacrifices will happen. People like Wetangula and therefore Kenya will also play along because it's about their survival. So having said that, we should be looking at what then the president and his newly found friend are up to. They want to create a new machine, a new political machine. They're most likely going to have a new party that is going to go to election. You know, in this country, you rarely find the same party going into the same party in government going into the next government in the same form. So let us be ready for the machine that is coming, because certainly there is a political machine coming.
And if that's the case, so this machine will have these two people as at this point, for lack of a better word, let's just say co-principals. So you've got Ruto on one hand, you've got Raila on the other hand. Where does this leave Kindiki?
Kindiki is not, is not one to be mentioned in this game. This is a high-stakes game. Don't mention Kindiki. He doesn't come with any gravitas.
No, what do you mean? He's the deputy president.
Yes,
Deputy president of the
He's the
country.
one who's been at the forefront with his empowerment programs, the whole country.
You know, deputy presidents in this country are just that. They deputize and they serve at the whims of the president. Leave alone the fact that in the constitution we've now placed it as their running mates. We thought that would heal, but we saw what happened with the deputy, with the Wamanyoro. So that happened. Maybe the only time that the deputy president survived is during Uhuru's time, because Ruto was certainly a person who could have been sacked, but he never was sacked. But even in the scheme of things, he was not a part of the bigger picture. So Kindiki is not a picture here. He's not in picture here. He does not bring numbers. Neither does he bring resources. He is just somebody that is available to be given a task. Now he's been given a task of empowerment. I don't even call it empowerment. It is called patronage. It is called tokenism. It's called running around. And remember, MPs who are participating in this token, in this so-called empowerment, are given money to contribute to. So if you look at it, it's obvious that MPs are receiving money for all sorts of reasons. In this one, you're called empowerment, you are invited, you are each given 100,000. So you also bring that money back. Who want you, if you are given 100 and you bring 50, they'll tell you, we gave you 100. Where is the other one?
It's been called showmanship. So my next question then is, where does this leave Musalia Mudavadi? Where does this leave Moses Wetangula? Before Mudavadi joined forces with William Ruto during the campaign, Mudavadi said there was going to be an earthquake. And the earthquake was, at the time, there were conversations that he was being courted by Raila so that he can get the Western voting bloc. When he decided to join our forces with William Ruto, then it was a departure from Raila Odinga. And we know how the campaign then went against him. Now, Raila Odinga has come in. So the first person you're saying who's going to be a casualty of this, who's going to be edged out, is Kithure Kindiki. Then where does this leave Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula?
Have you been following Musalia Mudavadi over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks? He has retreated some backyard in Western,
Yes, he has.
visiting Malava several times,
And asking why they're
defending
not
himself,
united.
asking questions. So the man has been forced to retreat to his backyard just to try and bring numbers. But remember, the arrival of Raila was always going to be at a cost. It's a cost at Kindiki, it's a cost to Wetangula, it's a cost to Musalia. Because that voting bloc is a voting bloc that is more associated with Raila than it is associated with, uniformly or unanimously with these two. So what is the issue here? Musalia has retreated to Western and he's campaigning for his life around the Malava seat. Not even Western, the Malava seat. Where's Waita in this one? He's somewhere there. Nobody knows exactly what he's doing. And what is happening in the meantime? He's being told that he's presiding over the most corrupt National Assembly. So is he safe where he's sitting? Absolutely not safe. So what will he have to do? Fight for survival or accept to be conscripted? Because at this point, you are either coming with numbers, coming with something, or you are just a part of, the flower team. Yeah. So you need some flower fellows, yes. Did they have voices at 2022? Absolutely, they had. Of course, Weta came with Ford Kenya, there was some voice there. Msala came with the NC, there was some voice there. Are they going to have a voice in 2027? Msala having folded the ANC and Ford Kenya having retreated to some nondescript, party? No. So, what is the equation? The equation is being determined by these two core principles.
I have a question about what's going on, but let's take a break at this point. We'll come back right after this and continue. Because, once you see a little bit of turmoil, you really have to ask what's cooking underneath. Dr. Martin Olo is an advocate and political analyst, joins us this morning, and we're taking a national outlook into the politics of the day and asking certain questions. We'll come back from this break and look into it. Don't go away at 22 minutes to 8, I beg your pardon.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Stronger guy, faster guy, younger guy.
3 of Toulouse. Got a handy enough win here.
This is a people's game. They will be bubbling about this one for weeks and months to come.
Let's go! Lights, camera, action. Put your mind on it, live the life that you
Ooh, what's it? Eco on. Killer game in a matter. Reconnect now. Dial *423#.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Like you said, it was not a political campaign issue going into 2022. It was an economic election. Corruption didn't really come into play. They said, okay, fine, we'll deal with it, but it's going to be over there in the corner. So when you hear that suddenly 2 weeks in succession, that these things are being discussed, the cynic in me wants to then ask, what else is really happening here? Is this really a discussion about corruption? Is this really a conversation now suddenly about what ought to happen within the walls of Parliament? Or is there something else afoot?
I said this is a political chess game. Dennis supported me with it. These are just pawns being moved around the chess table. Remember, and you've said it, when this government came in with the bitter, bottom-up empowerment, economic transformation, they really had an agenda. They had an agenda. In fact, they wanted to see a development that was inclusive, a development that included everybody, the hustlers and so on. Good agenda. 3 years down the line, where is that agenda? It's been reduced to tokenism, empowerment programs, because what they are doing in public and what they promise to do are very, very different things. And that's the problem that you're having, that if they had really good programs, they would not even be struggling about an agenda, because their program would be gaining traction and they would be cruising towards 2027 without any worry. But that is not working. In the meantime, they have to find yet another. Remember, in the previous time, they said Uhuru had messed up the economy. They came and found zero, and they are now rebuilding it up. They're telling you the dollar was I don't know where. It has now come here as if we are a major exporting country, so that when the dollar is down, we seem to be doing better. We are not. Now, having said that, they have to look for an agenda for 2027, and that agenda seems to be that we could have done well, except for corruption. And you can see how we have started with members of parliament. You'll see how some people will be arrested. Now we want to ensure corruption is not there, so please give us another chance in 2027. So corruption will be an agenda, and protecting devolution will be another agenda. Not forgetting that actually the biggest enemy of devolution in this country is the executive. it does not release resources
To the
in
councils,
time,
yeah.
and it does not really care or meet the promises of devolution. That is, but now you want to say it's because of MPs with these multiple resources. And Kenyans are very interesting. You just show them something to talk about, and they'll forget everything else. They'll be following that one. So these guys know us very well. They're working around our psyche. They say that corruption is a real problem. Now he has gone for it. And somebody will be saying devolution, which is protecting and giving us resources. We want to protect it. So that is an agenda for 2027.
So, Daktari, we talk about corruption, right? But here is a question where the president himself is a consumer of intelligence. He chairs the National Security Council. And intelligence would tell him of corrupt underdealings in Parliament. And these are things that one would argue is not something that you come to shout, let us see you walk the talk, So for the president to have all this intelligence of what corruption is doing, of who's taking corruption and who's giving all these corrupt funds, why is he not working on it? Why is he telling us? Why is he not walking the talk if at all he is interested in fighting corruption?
That's why I'm saying this is not a fight on corruption or a fight against corruption. This is a political game. Remember when Uhuru Kenyatta had a list? He passed that list to EACC, and he asked EACC to investigate. Granted that the list didn't have much substance, but at least he demonstrated that action should be taken. So he gave it to EACC. Of course, some heads rolled, some people lost positions, even cabinet secretaries, and that is important to know. So, and you're right, the president knows. In fact, he must even be having evidence on who wired what and to whom. He knows.
Yes.
So the easier thing would be to tell the head of his criminal investigation, to tell the head of EACC to prepare a case for ODPP to prosecute. That's the easier thing. But that's not the intention. The intention is raffle and make noise and say, I would have fought this thing, but you see, it's these MPs who are standing. You see, now they are even, rebelling against me. So this is a political game. Otherwise, if it wasn't, and remember also, you start the fight like this, who is safe, who is going to remain unscathed. So you also don't want to start in a way that it reaches you. You want to scatter others, then make people not speak about you or about your government. So it should be somewhere far. So this is also, a kind of distraction, so that focus is not on the executive. Focus then gets elsewhere.
Does he have leverage over members of parliament, or is it the other way around? Members of parliament have leverage over him when it comes to dealing with this?
My friend, both Ruto and Raila have a hold on to members of parliament in their respective parties. Most of these guys came through these individuals' goodwill and patronage. So these guys cannot call the president to question, neither can they call Baba to question. So these guys have no muscle, have no political, abilities to fight back.
Well, they did, but as things are unfolding, we have Edwin Sifuna, we have the likes of Babu Wino and other members still from within the ODM party who are not necessarily towing the lines, and people are now taking a different direction.
And you can see that inside the big house or inside their parties, they are being seen as pariahs. Granted, and I agree with them. In fact, I spent this week with them in Diani, both Babu and Senator Sifuna. They were very quiet because they're both lawyers now. Babu. So they were there, we had a good time. And we were talking about constitutionalism and other issues. So granted that they are speaking out. But look at them. They are being seen as spoilers. They're being seen as pariahs. They're being seen as rebels. Again, that's how leadership is made. And that's why I'm saying these noises are not a bad thing. So when Babu makes noise, and Sifuna makes noise, Ruto makes noise, and Raila makes noise, Kenyans are going to have to decide which noisier fellow are they going to go with. Because you see, in this country, we do not like gentlemen like Dennis Okari here. No. We like them rough. We like them noisy. And we like them ruffling feathers and so on. So politics of Kenya is made for drama. So the more dramatic, the more we are likely to listen to him.
But does this still mean, because you look at Raila Odinga's politics for the longest time, and sorry, we are moving now into the personalities because they are part of this conversation. They're the reason why actually we're having this conversation in the first place. We are looking at all these fallouts and what happened yesterday. Does he still have the same strength, the same pull that he used to have? Because once you start seeing cracks within his party, very close to the election, it's a danger for anyone who wants to look like you're not with, quote unquote, with Baba. Does it also, does this then mean that the party, it's losing its flavor, it's losing its strength, and at the very top, because the joining of these two, Raila and President Ruto, is in a way getting the numbers. Does he still have those numbers? Does he still have the same? Does the party still have the same old attractiveness?
There is an issue that we need to understand or perhaps take into consideration. There's a loss that UDA has incurred by losing Mount Kenya, no doubt about it. But there's a need for UDA to try and find another voice, another group or another block. And so the ODM block is important for it. But also, I want people to understand that you're not talking about ideologies here, you're talking about interests. Remember the three people we are talking about, Musalia, Raila, Ruto, were members of ODM at the beginning of ODM. They were also members of Pentagon. Yeah? Yes. In 2007, the real soldier for Raila was Ruto, all the way to KICC. So these are friends. This is a time for Raila to pay back because Ruto once sacrificed for him. They even fell out. So Raila is paying back Ruto. And this payback is important. And it resonates back to their villages. It resonates back to their constituency. So for Baba, he's coming with this constituency because he's saying, you know, this guy was with me, stood with me, suffered with me. I'm also standing with him. And of course, the message is very clear both for Rift Valley and for Nyanza. So that message is strong. For Musalia, you don't want to say anything because you need him in, whether he has numbers or not. You don't need him out because you have already many challenges. So at the end of the day, yes, Baba's flavor may be waning with people, but he's still Baba around here. He's still, remember when Orengo tried to go the other way around and the cracks, they started even threatening to impeach him, and the youth leader of ODM, aka Oburu Odinga, stood up to say that, you know, I'm also going to stand. So there are ways in which the dynasty in Nyanza is still fairly intact. It may not be as strong as it has been, but it's not, you can't wish it away.
When we look at the situation here where we talk about chances of a new political formation coming into play, and then we want to go to a place whereby political parties should be brought about with an ideology in place that essentially will form the pace and thought of a nation on ideologies, whether it is an economic ideology, whether it is a developmental ideology, there must be something. But it seems as though then that we get into the practice of forming parties to suit a political agenda, that whereby things have not worked in one area, then you say, okay, well, let's come together, you and I, Martin, let's form another party that will see us get into leadership. But the point of it is not to make a nation better, not to develop a nation, not to enhance a nation economically, but it's for you and I. Is that dangerous?
It's not dangerous. It is the way we do our politics.
And is that all right?
Okay, that's the question.
Okay.
When you look at DCP, what Wamunyoro is saying is that I cannot go to this game without my own vehicle. So he needs a vehicle to mobilize. When you look at UDA, it was Ruto's fallback position because he couldn't trust that Jubilee would deliver. Yeah. If you look at ODM, it has always been a vehicle that Raila uses for elections. Whether he wins or not, he still uses it for handshakes and now broad government. So it is still a vehicle. Is it about ideology? Is it about him? it's about him. Is it about ideology or is it about DCP is about Rigathi Gachagua? So at the end of the day, our political parties take the shape of the leader and take the support of a bloc. And the bloc tends to be a regional bloc or a tribal bloc. That is our situation, and we need to agree.
I'm all for redefining what a democracy is. There are conversations around saying that you don't take what has been handed down from you just because it sounds great as a form of leadership or governance, that you can craft your own. And I think we're in a dispensation where crafting your own political discourse or journey for nations in this day and age is absolutely fine. But when you do it at the expense of the people, then are we not looking at a problem here?
You see, it depends on how you come to this. If you come to this with the ideal philosophy around democracy, you will not see it. But again, democracy in its operations is also overrated, because democracy is not about quality, it's about quantity. It's about numbers. And if you bring together a block of tribalists, they bring the number, they win. So that doesn't reflect the nation, doesn't reflect, and indeed the coming together of UDA, or rather coming together of Jubilee between Ruto and Uhuru was not about ideology, it was about numbers. No wonder somebody talked about tyranny of numbers, that numbers can also terrorize and can bring tyranny. So having said that, it is a question of how do we construct our national politics, how inclusive can we be? Granted that our models do not necessarily take the Westminster model, they don't take the American model, and even the American model is now under attack, for example. So what we need to accept, number one, is that we form political parties around individuals. Number two, we come to political parties with our tribes in mind. And number three, we look at Kenya for what we can get out of it. It's our turn. You know, some people have said that they are eating the government.
So what space is created for would-be new leaders? Because if you look over the last 30 years in Kenya, 30 years ago, presented you with certain leaders. 30 years later, you're still dealing in the same pool of leaders. I hazard a guess as to who's different, who wasn't there 30 years ago. In terms of who the nation looks at and says it's this person, or this person aspiring to be, has been in that pool for 30 years. Based on what you're saying then, what space is created for those who would be up and coming? Would they create their own political parties as vehicles towards leadership?
Absolutely. They need political parties which now will drive their agenda. In this case, for example, look at Gen Zs. They need a party that can speak to their agenda, because they're also coming with a generation of some ideas and difference. So they need a vehicle of their own. But there's something that I want us not to lose. The fight for independence and the fight that brought us all the way to where we got our first constitution was a national fight. When you look at people like Ochieng Oneko, you look at people like Ngei, you look at people like Masinde Muliro, you look at people like Martin Shikuku, you look at people like Ronald Ngala, these were nationalists. These are people who believed it. If you look at Jaramogi Odinga, for him to say that in order for Kenya to have independence, Kenyatta should be free, that was not a tribal agenda. That was a national agenda. People like Tom Mboya, born and bred in urban areas from Rusinga, but generally a Kenyan who represented people in trade unions, both in terms of central and everywhere. So there were people that fought this. Our problem, which is a discussion we should have on another day, comes at independence, and with Kenyatta beginning, and not just alone, the African leaders beginning to reconstruct the colonial structures, which essentially existed on the basis of tribalism and essentially divide and rule. Now that's our problem. Even today, when you see us talking about provincial administration, when you see us talking about the quarrel between national government and the county governments, it's because our national government wants to penetrate up to the village, does not believe that it can delegate that to the county governments. Yet the constitution says that they are independent but interdependent. So our propensity towards tribalism and towards control and towards bringing our tribe or curtain to national place, the imperial, what has been described as imperial president, is our challenge. That we come with our tribal card, we come with our tribal regalia, yet we are occupying national spaces. And those are the things that do not work well.
Now, speaking of coming with all these tribal cards and all those things, Wamunyoro is coming back
Yes.
this week. There's a lot of talk on if he lands, he may be diverted to
Eldoret. They have said Eldoret. I don't know. That's true.
Kisumu. And we have an upcoming by-elections. In your analysis, Wamunyoro coming back, all the anticipation from that side, now on this other side, it's very, very clear that Raila has made it very clear he's working with Ruto. And looking at him coming back, and of course the alliances on the other side where you have Matiang'i, you've got Kalonzo Musyoka, Martha Karua, and everybody else around, Eugene Wamalwa and the likes, what do you see happening? Because in the past we've seen by-elections shaping what will essentially then be the outlook of the general election.
There is a fight for survival. There's a fight for relevance. Those outside government must put up a very good fight over those by-elections, and those inside government will be putting up even a bigger fight, because any loss means something to them. It means lack of confidence in them. So there will be a good fight, a good run. So Wamunyoro needs to come back so that he's part of the fight. And let's give it the benefit that he needs to come back and he needs to play. But how do we handle him? If a government decides that they divert him to Eldoret or divert him to Mombasa, that can only be good news for Wamunyoro. Because then he'll get a ready audience there and people will be waiting to listen to him. So the better thing is allow him to come back, let him have his day, allow people who believe in him to celebrate him, and then let him do the politics. But if they want to help him, start putting gags around him, start doing drama around him, they will only be giving him the prominence he needs.
But they will be denying him the numbers, because we know with politicians and the conversation around him landing at JKI and then having a procession from JKI all the way to the CBD, if there are numbers, then for a politician, that doesn't look good.
And that's the point, that he wants to mobilize around that.
Yes.
And if you allow him, it might succeed or it might not succeed. So just allow him to do it. And if he succeeds, it's not the end of the day. Elections are not happening tomorrow. This is politics. But if you divert him, what you've done is you have given him even more fuel, even more political mileage. And this has happened before. Remember those days when people used to be arrested and taken to their villages to be tried. It only gave those people audiences that they did not have. So when they want to do that kind of a thing, it's only to popularize those people. So how you handle Gachagua, if I was in government, I would tell them, think about it again. If you want to give him fuel, continue doing what you're doing. Of course, already they have, Gachagua is a creation of this government. I mean, he's not a very popular guy, and he's not a very likable guy. He's a good friend of mine. By the way, he went to school with him, so he's a good friend of mine. But this government has promoted him more by simply treating him the way they treated him.
It's like they tell us how the US is the one that created Osama bin Laden.
Yeah. Some of these creations are our own.
Our own.
Yeah.
And it's interesting what the next, couple of days, weeks will look like. Thanks for giving us those insights. Opens up our minds for, attention and where to place it and what to actually discuss and move forward. Dr. Martin Lowe is an advocate and political analyst, has been our guest this